Hey, everybody, this is the Journey to an ESOP and Beyond podcast, where we are looking at providing information on employee stock ownership plans. This could be information for going through a transaction, so pre-ESOP, or it could be information around what happens after the fact, so post-ESOP issues. Today, we get to interview Jason Ireland. He has gone through the whole process. He's running a company out of Indiana that is a 100% employee stock ownership plan. So with all that, I wanted to welcome Jason on our podcast.
Thank you, Phillip. Appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
So right out of the get-go, tell us, Jason, what is your favorite movie and why?
I've got so many favorite movies, and I like so many across different genres. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably go with Caddyshack. I'm a big golfer, and then also the humor side of it. Chevy Chase is brilliant.
You're too young for Caddyshack, though. I mean that's like one of my movies.
It is amazing. There's nothing better. Rodney Dangerfield, Chevy Chase. I mean, just that whole movie, the whole everything is just amazing. You can't get better than that.
It's a classic. And you're a golfer.
And I'm a golfer, so growing up golfing since I was 3 years old, and they don't make a whole lot of golf movies outside of Tin Cup and Caddyshack. So Caddyshack was it.
That's it, right? Cool. So great. Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. So one of the things I love about these types of interviews is just it's actually really helpful for people to kind of hear from somebody that's gone through the whole transaction. And a lot of our listeners, they're thinking about doing an ESOP, and they've gone through they're looking at this as a potential opportunity. So this is helpful because you can just share real stories from your experience and how that really worked from beginning, to end and where you are now. So before we jump into that, let's talk a little bit about the company. So ISCO, or Industrial Supply Company, is a company that sell manufacturing products into the manufacturing companies. And so your company really is more of like a distributor of goods to, higher end companies and customers. So I did a probably bad job. Why don't you explain what ISCO does, and then we'll go into like the structure of the business.
Sure. Well, we've been around for over 100 years. We're actually celebrating 110 years this year. It was started back to service the mining and tile industry back around in our area in Indiana. And since we've kind of grown, we've gone through HVAC and plumbing. We still do a little bit of plumbing and pipe valves and fittings, but 80% or more of our business today is in industrial and MRO space. We also do personal protection, janitorial, sanitation products, and we buy from the large manufacturers that don't want to put or take, the expense of having all their people out on the street selling to individual customers, and we take that on for them as a distributor, and we sell directly to manufacturing companies and mom and pop shops, restaurants, really anywhere, municipalities. We don't really turn away any kind of business at all. So we like to be the one-stop shop, and we like to try and make it as easy as possible to do business with. So anything and everything, if you need it, we're going to try and get it for you. And if we can't, we'll tell you where to get it at a better price.
That's awesome. Now, so what if I slow down the story a little bit? 100-year-old business is not a very common thing to find in the United States. So, and it was not only a 100-year-old business, but it was a family business too. So let's walk through like the family history timeline here, because I think part of your story is so intriguing to me, because typically you don't see a family business say going to 100% ESOP. So that's kind of the rationale to kind of dig deeper into that. So 100-year company, who started in your family the business originally?
So it was my great uncle who started the business, and then it went to my great grandfather, great grandfather, father, and then now myself and my brother are the fifth generation. Surviving the Great Depression and going through all that. I think there was even a point in our history where we were selected by the government for this area to sell tires whenever they were very hard to find. Wow. But yeah, it's just a very unique history, and we've been doing it for so long. The ghosts came with the building, and it's kind of a fun story. We actually had ghost hunters come by here this a couple of weeks ago and just did a little podcast on it, and very interesting stuff that they came away with. So we can
Pretty
confirm
cool.
it's semi-haunted at least. So
I'm
uh,
glad. I'm glad you brought
folks,
up the ghost because that was something I was going to ask you about because there's very few companies too that have a ghost in the building. So the building you're in was built in 1915 or something like that.
well, it was before 1915. That's whenever we began our company in Brazil,
Okay.
Indiana. Moved here in 1920. Um, and the building actually used to be a hotel before we took over half of it. It was the Bader Hotel, and then it turned to the Union Hotel, and then we ended up buying the other half of it. So our address is actually two different numbers. It's a 322-328 and not just a single one because we took over both sides of the building. But it used to be split right down the middle, and you can go up and still see all the fun wallpaper on the walls upstairs, and it's a lot of cool stuff, that good history that came through with the building too.
So the ghost, what was the ghost name again? I forgot. I know
Rudy.
this
Yeah, Rudy.
Rudy.
Yeah.
Rudy. That is like it's well, we're at the site, like just so everybody knows, we're at the site visit and we're like, I didn't even know the building was had a ghost or whatever. I actually never saw the ghost, but there definitely has been, some, and you had your own ghost experience, right? I know we're going to get into the ESOPs in a second, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, anytime you're in here after hours, or by yourself alone, it's never a fun experience. You hear large adding machines being calculated on the upstairs floors. You hear footsteps constantly walking across the hardwoods, and uh, it's just a little eerie feeling whenever you're by yourself. But I will say that they're mostly they're not malevolent or anything bad. It's just they like to poke fun, and we've had several cleaning crews that work nights that actually quit because they experienced a lot of nighttime fun, if you will. The cleaning ladies said they got pinched in the butt by the ghost, and Rudy playing a trick on them or something like that. And I
mm,
gotta say, I probably wouldn't be able to do it either if I were them.
that's so, I mean, I honestly, I guess the last joke about the ghost would be the ghost is not able to be part of the ESOP, correct?
Maybe maybe with phantom shares. I don't know.
Maybe. Okay. Oh my gosh. All right. No, so that's kind of a unique thing, right? To have that. As you go through the whole thing, you and your brother took over, and I remember going through this with because I really worked with your dad first, and then I worked with you guys. How was it for you in terms of thinking about the ESOP initially? Like, because there had to be a thought like, hey, the family tradition, you guys have kids, and just thinking about that going back to the next generation. What were things that you were thinking about when we were first kicking around the ESOP as a potential deal?
I think it was mostly surprise. We were definitely caught off guard. We knowing that it was kind of like a legacy stock that was passed down from generation to generation, and then to just kind of have this thrust onto us. It was definitely surprising and a little bit off-putting. And I think from that time that we were told you have to either take this ESOP and take it on, or we're going to look at maybe a competitor to buy you guys out. And from that moment, obviously, all I wanted to do was learn about ESOPs. So I started reading and gaining as much knowledge as I could on what it is and how it would affect everybody in our company. And that ended up kind of resulting in me wanting to push for the ESOP and take this on and keep it going for industrial supply, all of our employees, and obviously myself and my brother too. We just the initial shock is worn off, and I think that we're all very excited about what this brings, and all the things that came from the ESOP as far as eliminating the union in our warehouse and have them moving over to be company men has been a great addition for us. And I think that there's been a renewed energy within our teams and just people wanting to preach industrial supply as much as they can.
Yeah, I think that my experience was Don, your dad, and I went through it. I did a presentation to you guys, I think it was originally, and then nothing happened, right? And it was like a little space of time. I don't know how long it was, but it was a while. I mean, I remember just thinking, all right, well, then they're probably not going to do it. I was actually surprised, that it did come back. And that was something you guys must have kind of done the research and worked through. Hey, this is something that could actually work, and it may not have been what you were envisioning, right? And I think that's the part that can be, how do you get through that process for people that are thinking, either whether is this thrust upon them or not, but how did you get through that? Just kind of feeling that this was a better alternative than the competitor?
Well, I think just in terms of protecting our legacy,
Mhm.
protecting our employees and our management team, anybody that comes in on a competitive buyout probably doesn't need me. They're wanting the space, they're wanting the sales, they're wanting the warehouse, and then all the other tasks are probably centralized. So,
Mhm.
um, I think it was more of just wanting to make sure that our team was protected, that our legacy was protected, and that, we do see this as a viable option going forward, and we want to grow the business.
Mhm.
Um, to go through the whole process, I think it was just the mentality for me of just, and we've got the mantra of own it all across the building. And it was honestly just kind of ironic that it happened to come and be an ESOP because, we've got these ISCO way cards that we give out to all of our employees, and it's our 31 fundamentals of who we are and what we stand for. And number one is take ownership. And it just was by coincidence, and maybe just kind of employing that mantra myself and just saying, I'm just going to take on every bit of this. I'm going to own it, and we're going to do it our way, my way.
Yeah.
We're going to do it, and this is how we're going to do it, and it ended up coming to fruition.
Nice. Yeah. And I think that is just the reality of working through the process. And in your case, and I'll kind of say this because I think it's important, we just took our time. And had we not taken our time, then it would have probably been like, no, forget it. And it would have been disrupted because something had to happen eventually, right?
Yeah.
And in the midst of all that, your dad was also looking at retiring, and you were looking at stepping into a role of succeeding him in his position as well, which is, also a big transition because the ESOP, I always tell people, ESOP is an ownership transition as well as it facilitates management transition, but it's not going to be maybe on purpose. It's just that has to be done concurrently. And you guys did that concurrently in your situations up to the point so that when we closed, you literally took over that like right after the words, like title wise and everything else. What
Right.
was going through your head with that like transition of taking over what your dad was doing? And was that helping you with the whole transition to becoming an ESOP?
I think it was more of a stipulation of the ESOP.
Okay.
As I said, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it our way, and that was part of it. If we're going to be running this as a newly formed company of an ESOP, then the management structure was going to change, and it was going to be under my eye, if you will.
Mhm.
Um, it wasn't an easy situation to deal with. I know that we kept kind of getting pushed back to closings. We had an accounting manager, our accounting manager left kind of right in the middle of the closing. And then we had another one that we brought on, and he was not good at getting it done, and we had to make a change up from there. So we were basically scrambling to do 3 or 4 months of, month reconciliations and maybe at a time frame of 2 or 3 weeks. So it was a little hectic at when we were going through it, and I think honestly it maybe just helped us become who we are now. And we figured that we can work through all this and get it done ourselves. And we did hire an accounting manager now who is she's great, and I think it'll be a great fit. And um,
That's good.
we don't have that situation anymore.
Yeah.
Kind of dealing with that transition at the same time as the ESOP, there was a lot to go through, a lot that we're still learning as we're going. But literally in the announcement of the ESOP to the employees, Dad had announced his retirement and the appointment of myself and my brother to the vice president role.
Yeah. No, I think that's cool. And kind of some of that in there that we just talked about. It's like the reality of the process itself. And I'll kind of walk back through this a little bit just so people can understand, is you do a lot of analysis in the ESOP planning side, which is what we did. And then we got you guys involved, and the deal kind of like went through a process of building consensus. And then eventually the consensus was built. Then we got through now we're going to actually put the deal together kind of thing. And one of the things that really, like in your story, that stood out to me was your dad said, "Hey, Jason's going to be the one that's going to work with you directly." So it was then now it was me and you putting the deal together. And really, honestly, very helpful because sometimes without somebody that's championing in the deal on your side, it can be hard to get you got to get some momentum. You got to get through all these different steps, which we'll get through or talk about. And then there's a learning curve, right? So you're like going through this process for the first time, and honestly, you have to just trust what I'm saying. You just trust me, and it'll be okay. And then there's the reality. We had a plan, and then your accounting manager we didn't have that. And the reality of that is you guys had to adjust for that. And it was fine in the end, but it was not ideal because it created a lot, like your pain of like, all right, you need that, you need that, we need all this information. And you guys did a great job of getting it together, but that's a real deal. Like that happens all the time. You have a plan and you flex through the plan. And I think that the goal was to get over the goal line of like, hey, we just got to figure this out. Right. And I think that is part of getting ready for a deal. You just got to know it's going to take some figuring it out. You don't know sometimes what you're going to get into, which was the accounting manager thing for you guys.
Yeah, it was definitely a big hiccup for us, and we were able to make it through, and honestly learned a lot throughout the whole process about things that we need to make sure we do every month, and in case someone's out or absent. And another hiccup that we kind of ran into throughout the whole process was our number of stockholders. I don't know if you remember, we had 52
Yeah.
stockholders, and a lot of them, I was surprised they even had a cell phone, to be honest with you. It was a little bit crazy at times trying to get a signature or get someone to read an email, or some of them had to go to the library and actually use a computer to pull it up. And it was not much fun going through all that and contacting 52 people for signatures, but we got it done. So as you said, we worked through it, and better for it at the end.
The moral of the story with having 52 stockholders is don't have 52 stockholders. But if you do have 52 stockholders, there is just amount of work that has to be done. And the difficult part is these, like Jason said, were stockholders that were pretty far removed from everything day to day. They were minority. Most of them were really minority owners. Like they had a very small percentage. And so we had to really clean up that whole amount of shares and stock that everybody had. And that was a lot of legwork. Most of it fell on you, right? And your dad probably.
Myself and our HR manager, Mary, we were scrounging up phone numbers, creeping on people's Facebooks, whatever we could do to try and find a contact that we could reach out to. So it was quite the process, but it worked out.
Meanwhile, you have a day job.
We still have a day job to figure out
Yeah.
everything else with running a company. Exactly.
Yeah. So going through the process, one of the things you mentioned with the union people. So sometimes we have people that are thinking, I've got union people, I've got non-union people. And the first thing I would just tell people is that most of the time, the ESOP is perfect for non-union, not perfect for union, because union have already a pension plan and other things connected to their compensation. So most of the time, that's the split. We usually just do it for non-union people. You can do it for union people. In your situation, you have union people that left the union for the company for the ESOP. So come walk that out a little bit, because I'm sure there are people are thinking they're in that similar situation with some people that might want to leave the union and go right to the company.
So we only have, I think it's 6 or 7 employees in our warehouse that are part of a union, and it happened back in the 80s, and honestly, they were just kind of been a little bit separated from the company since then. We've just kind of worked out a deal every single year with them, and it runs through the pipe, valves, and fitters, or steam fitters union here locally. And it was honestly, I don't necessarily think that there was a great fit for them, because everyone else, it's more of the customers that they're serving that fit the union. But they were still part of it, and they were still participating, and a lot of them were vested. And what we did was we had the stipulation that we separated out the union employees. They cannot participate in the ESOP. And all we did was we said, if you want to participate, we would love to have you. Here's kind of the what it would entail. Here's, the pay. It's no different than what you're getting. It's just here you're not having to put money into the pension. You're just kind of building shares over time and building wealth over time, just based upon working here and doing your job. And it was enough to sell them to. It was a unanimous vote for every single one of the employees that were in the union, and they exited the union and came over to industrial supply on the ESOP side. So it worked out great. And honestly, I think that was the most exciting part about this, is to get everybody under one roof and all, preaching the same industrial supply. It was good.
Yeah, I mean, just to have only like six or seven people in the union and then everybody else being company, that's also like this, it's a little imbalance, right? Sometimes it's just different story, but the fact that you guys were able to convince them of that, and now they're a completely company people and not looking back. Now you don't have to deal with any union things forever, right? So that's got to be like,
it's a little bit of a weight lifted off. It's never been much of a hassle for us. It's just kind of been separate and a little bit more work to try and deal with. It's a negotiation every 2 years, and honestly, it wasn't difficult. It was just more of added headaches that we had to deal with every now and then.
Yeah. Well, you're going to probably get, like, you could probably write a book or a blog at this point to say, hey, how I got rid of my union using an ESOP. And if everybody's going to write, but your circumstances are probably simpler. So you equalized the pay and said, hey, this is good. And then to get it even on 6 people, to get unanimous vote is pretty impressive.
Yeah, we've had some changeover in our warehouse, and most of them are younger. I think that probably helped that not all of them were vested in the union, but they were union members. They're paying their dues and doing all that. So I think if we didn't have the makeup that we did, it may have been a little bit different. But it ended up just working out great. I think the timing was perfect, and we were able to offer them a comparative package. And I think that I think they were probably tired of dealing with the added headaches too, and just wanted to be part of the club. So it was great.
Now, big victory. And your HR person did a lot of that work as far as analyzing everything. That's got to be a nightmare.
Yes. Oh my gosh, she's been a rock star throughout this entire process. So we wouldn't have been able to do any of this without her help and all of her expertise and doing the comparisons and offering up all these different sheets for them to take a look at, so they've got something in hand. And it's honestly been she is just terrific.
Yeah, awesome. Well, cool. That's a really interesting part that you don't actually hear of that a lot. So I think that's probably another unique thing. I mean, 100-year-old company, family transition to ESOP, union to non-union, or non-union, union to non-union. When it comes down to the process, let's just break down the process a little bit. So we go through this process of analyzing the company valuation-wise, analyze the structure, the feasibility. I know we were looking at bank financing, but we decided not to. And your situation just gave you guys a lot more flexibility. And I do think that would have been, it's much better considering all the things. Then we got all the people involved, which included your trustee, the independent valuation firm, and then of course the attorney, to put the whole deal together. What stood out to you in the whole process, like going through it, that was like, what you weren't expecting it that way, or it was difficult or challenging and that kind of thing? What stood out like as the most challenging part of the process of going from all the analysis to the deal teams to negotiating and at closing?
I think just all the work. And I mean, there was a lot. I knew there was going to be a lot, but I think it was just more of knowing that there's so many people that need different things to get this deal done. And, your team was great about helping us tell exactly where we need to send it to, when we need to send it, what exactly we need to send. So, I think having an advisor in your corner is obviously just crucial to get the deal done. Outside of that, I mean, I think just the legalities of everything. I knew we would need a lawyer, but I wasn't, reading through the plan agreement, and we had to create new bylaws because ours were very outdated. And then we had to do board of directors structure that we had to create. The full process of just going through all the legalities of it and making sure it was all kosher and good to go, I think was just kind of the surprise. Not necessarily a bad surprise, because I think we have a lot of stuff that just needs updated. But going through all that process, and then honestly I was just surprised at how responsive everybody was. If I had a question, I'd just fire an email and I'd get a response back almost immediately. So knowing that you've got that and can get answers quickly, I think made the process a lot easier than maybe it would have been if we didn't have you in our corner and the advisors that we did.
Yeah. I agree too, because it's at the end, you're just like, wow, let me just let a big sigh of relief out because I don't, and then your normal job becomes easy because you've been doing your normal job plus all this on top of it. And in some cases, you can delegate some of that stuff, but a lot of it has to run through your email, through your computer. You're going to be the one that tracks down all the stock certificates and all the different things that the legal side does get a bit of voluminous because of the evidence that they need for the Department of Labor. At the same time, it cleans everything up, and you're kind of like now you're. I think one of the biggest benefits in my mind is you don't have to worry about now what happens, right? Because now you know what happens. It's all kind of set up, and now you're kind of at the helm of running an employee-owned company, which again you're learning that too, right? At the same time.
Yes, learning as we go. And I think now it's just more of, well, what do we do now? What do we need to do? And our TPA now is kind of in charge of telling us exactly what needs to be done and when it needs to be done, plus our trustee. So we definitely have still people in our corners that are telling us what needs to be done and when. And thank goodness they're there because we're still learning, as you said. It's just a process, and I'm hoping that by next year we'll be more on a smooth path and we know exactly what to expect and when stuff needs to be done and processed and turned in. And so we're definitely looking forward to riding the wave, if you will.
Yeah, for the record, we closed at the middle of last year, right? So
July. Yep.
July. So
Yep.
you're still in that 12-month of that post-closing. I would call it post-closing learning curve. To get
Right.
everything up to speed, to where it becomes hopefully more like clockwork, and then every year's kind of now just doing the same thing, but same thing like taxes and whatnot that you have to have. And in your situation, because you have multiple offices, talk to us of like, how did you, I know we helped you a little bit on the communication side, but ultimately like you're a great communicator. How did you go about getting the message to your people, and how are you guys doing that kind of on an ongoing basis as far as teaching them about the ESOP?
Sure. So whenever it first came out that we were converting to an ESOP, we held employee meetings. Actually, it was with your team. And so we held that for, I think it was 2 different sessions for all of our employees to attend. And it was just kind of a general information overview of what an ESOP is, what it means to them, and what it will mean going forward. I think that was very well received. From there, we actually we designed T-shirts for all of our employees. It says, and we updated our logo to have employee owned on there. And just so the other thing that we do is through our way cards, our fundamentals, is we try to bring it back to ownership in the ESOP. And so each week we have a different fundamental that we cover and we send out to our employees. And having some aspect of the ESOP that's shown in there, I think is just an added bonus to remind people that, oh yeah, we're employee owners of this company, so we need to take a little extra pride and get our jobs done efficiently and as well as we can. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the other part that we do for communication. It's really just as we see everybody, we just kind of, hey, remind you of the ownership and what it means to you. And we have comments all the time about, so I can just park in your spot whenever I get here since I'm an owner and that kind of thing. But it's great. Oh yeah.
Share your office, I guess, and tell you what to do.
Open door, so go for it.
Exactly. And so one thing about like what you said, and you touched on it a little bit earlier too, is just this ISCO way cards that you guys have. You guys have, before I even got there, you had a great culture. I mean, I would just say, I know that because I got in the building, and apart from the ghost, everybody's super happy. And, and I think that's important because a part of the transition of being an ESOP is you get the opportunity to just continue to extend a good culture. And now we get to the tool of the ESOP, right, on top of it. So talk a little bit about like because you're the president now. And I think part of that role is like, you got to be the culture guy. You got to be the figurehead and help continue to build. Culture is like one of those things you just got to keep feeding it. Like it has to be fed. What, from your perspective, how does that work in terms of just transitioning that? Is your culture changing at all with this? And if it is, in what way?
I don't think it's necessarily changing, maybe improving. I think that we've got a little bit more of that own it mentality that's spread throughout the company. The good part about us is, yes, we do have a good culture, but we have so many good managers and employees in place that do their job and just own it every single day. So there's not a whole lot of added communication that I need to do when it's being preached from the ground up.
Mhm.
You know, we have employee meetings at our Madison branch frequently, where our manager is constantly preaching about the employee ownership side and just reminding everybody about how much of a benefit this is for them. And it's just kind of fun to see, I guess. Just well, I do try and communicate as much as I can whenever it comes to this side of it. I don't always have to be the sole voice that does. You can just kind of see it resonate throughout the entire company.
Yeah, and especially you touched on it. I was going to say it too. Like you have multiple locations, and that's a reality for a lot of companies. Is like now they have multiple locations. How do they build culture in each of these offices? Anyways, is always going to be an issue. Now on top of it, the employee-owned company concept. So, and you're not going to be in every office all the time. Did you go do like a circuit tour of like the offices, or how did you do that?
So two of our branches only have two people.
Oh,
So
yeah, you don't.
those are pretty small, and those were done with phone calls. One of them is in Connecticut, so I haven't made a trip out there just yet, but that'll be soon. I'm trying to get out there this year. Our Madison team, we've had multiple trips down there and conversations. We've got an employee dinner that's coming up next week, where my brother and I are going to go down there and talk with them all about how the year was, how we did, and all the changes that came about. And that'll be an exciting thing that we can all share in and talk about the changes, the improvements, the things we need to do for this coming year and beyond. Um, so it's been good.
And so with the part of the culture too is like with your key people, and and when I say key people, I mean I don't really have any definitive, like it could be all the people that run the offices, like your branch manager, whomever, like you think is a key person. Is there anything that stood out for the key people that are more kind of like, if you take your rank and file and you go in your circle, your key people, and of course you and your brother are in the middle of that, and then your board is going to be overseeing it, that you felt like was important to the key people as far as the long-term plan? And that could be as simple as, hey, we're just being open about what we're doing, our business plan.
Yeah, I think just sharing as much information about everything as possible was good in terms of helping everyone understand why we did what we did and the process around it. I think as a company who traditionally doesn't have or hasn't had much debt at all, to now going in and having these notes has been a big change for us, and a little bit change in our mindset away from growth and more of, sustainability, and making sure, yes, we are still wanting to grow, but some of the strategic decisions may have been postponed a little bit until we see exactly how this affects us over the long term. And I think just sharing that information with all of our decision makers and our management team really allowed them to see, open kimono, if you will, just to see everything that's going on. And I think the more everybody knows, the better they are equipped to handle all the decisions for their branches, their departments, and everything.
Yeah. I've seen it, and you mentioned the debt side, because I think that's such a relevant issue of the beginning steps, right? The beginning step of being an ESOP, especially going from 0% to 100% ESOP, is there's going to be the reality of debt. And what we have is the benefit of being tax exempt, because you have that. But there's got to be a sense of like, burden that, hey, we got to get that debt off the books, right? And I know that probably does shape the way you guys think about your next few years. I have the benefit of seeing this stuff work out with companies, and I can tell you, for the most part, I've seen companies just blow the debt away, like because of the tax benefits. I've seen it happen. Like they've hit their numbers, cash is there. The cash isn't going to be siphoned off either, by the way, because it doesn't get siphoned to the shareholders anymore. It's just there, and then it starts building up. So I've seen companies that we did their ESOPs like years and years ago, and now they're completely debt free. And then the cash is just ballooning, right? Now they have the issue. But I think that that's a relevant thing to think about, because you do kind of have that sense of burden, right? I got to figure out this part of it. And getting people, I think what you said really is really good, because getting your people involved in that, they need to understand. The more they understand what you're thinking, the better it is. Because I think too, sometimes people, if they don't know, sometimes they can drift negative, like, oh, well, this thing's not working. So getting them involved in that sense of, it's not even a business problem. It's just a fact that you have. Like, you guys mortgage the house has a mortgage on it. The more you pay the debt off, the more equity you build. It's as simple as that. So it's like, let's rally the troops, build cash flow. That's why I got my I love EBITDA shirt on, because it's all about EBITDA. So anyway, the point is that you're got to be realistic about it. And then once you see a couple of years click by and they start seeing the debt come off, the value go up, then it's like you can build some great momentum around that.
For sure. And I think too, it kind of helps in the decision making for not just me, but for our department heads whenever they're factoring in the ROI. So if they want to make an investment, I'm preaching ROI because we need to have it. Mm-hmm. And so they're being a little bit more analytical in their decision making. I think that's really improved everything.
Yeah, analytical with growth and costs. Being careful not to hire more people than you need. Careful to be turning the lights off. I mean, but that makes like a good business, right? Everybody's like more owner mindset. Like, hey, how are we actually going to do this together? And that really is the point of being an ESOP. It's just another journey. How do you get there? How do you communicate it? And I think what you've started off with is really good, because the statistics are there. Like, if you are communicating this regularly to people, they're going to get it, and they're going to make it. They're going to all be rowing in the same direction, and that will create and propel, the value of the business going forward for everybody. So
that's the hope.
That's the hope. So with all of that, we're kind of almost out of time. Anything that you would kind of throw out to people that are thinking about being an ESOP company, and things that you've learned, or anything that you would say now that you are an ESOP company, things that you've learned, kind of a wrap up summary from your perspective?
Yeah, I think the initial shock was more about the debt and what you're taking on, but the more you read and understand about an ESOP and how it works, for me, it kind of eased that burden a little bit. Learn as much as you possibly can when you can, because the more you know, the more informed of a decision you're going to be able to make, especially for a decision this big whenever it comes to an entire company. So read, learn, do whatever you can. Hire the right advisors, people that make it easier for you. So that's definitely what we did, and helped throughout the entire process, and still continues to help today.
Cool. Well, Jason, thank you so much for being on today. It's super helpful for people to hear hands-on what it's like, and where you are, and maybe in a few years we'll do this again and see where you guys are with all the other stuff, because those are always interesting as well.
Sounds great. Thank you for the invite, and it was great talking to you, Phillip.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.
For everybody else, thanks for listening today, and enjoy the next step on your journey to an ESOP.